Hello friends, welcome to Flosstube and Variety Show number 51. I'm Emily Williams in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and I'm happy to have you join me today. Today is July 8th, 2022. And we've had heat advisories for 3 of the past 4 days. In fact, I think it was Tuesday, the high temperature was 102. I kind of wish I were doing a temperature project this year because I would certainly be using the extreme colors of my spectrum, at least on the hot end. In North Carolina, we do occasionally get down to single digit high temperatures, even high temperatures, but maybe once in 10 years we might have a high temperature of 9 or 8 degrees Fahrenheit, I'm talking about. For those of you who are not from Fahrenheit using countries, and you may think 8 degrees, that's not that bad, because it isn't that bad if you're talking Celsius, but it's pretty cold especially for North Carolina. Yes, but anyway, why am I talking about January weather in July? I'm sure it's wishful thinking, right? So let's get into the meat of the show today. The show, wow, very pretentious. Sorry, the video. Flosstube means that I'm going to talk about my cross-stitch projects, some of them, and variety show means I'm going to talk about something else, and we'll see what that turns out to be. Cross-stitch first. Last weekend was the Blackbird Design Weekend Stitch-Along, as the first weekend of every month is, and there's a hashtag for that, which I've put in the description box below in case you want to search on Instagram for pictures of what people are working on or have worked on. I am working on In Full Glory by Blackbird Designs, which looks like this. It's not very big. I mean, this makes it look huge. It isn't very big, but it's a lot of stitching. And so I should do this, sorry. I'm prepared. I have a bunch of stuff here on the table in front of me, but then I discover I'm not really prepared. I did not take this out of the hoop. But you can see I got going on the house, the roof, windows. There's also a door here, and I ran out of that color of thread on my needle, and I decided, okay, I'm sick of that color anyway. So I went ahead and started on the red-ish color. Now, if I were doing this again, I would choose a different red that was more red. This is a little dark salmon-y-ish color, brick, sort of a light brick red color, which is a fine color. That's one reason I'm not going to change it now. Will I do it again? I don't know, but this is one of the challenges that so first of all, it's almost sacrilegious to criticize Blackbird Designs. It is. But here's my challenge. They design, I'm sure, their primary design medium is over-dyed threads. Classic Colorworks, Weeks, Dye Works, things like that. But in their charts, they kindly give DMC versions. And I didn't follow the DMC version. So is this my fault, their fault? What is it? Partly because they are wanting to do it on 36 count or 32 count linen with 2 threads, and their DMC version uses blends in order to approximate the overdyed variegation. And I'm doing it on 40 count, so I don't want to use 2 threads, because even I, who love really dense coverage of my stitching, don't want to stitch 2 over 2 on 40 count linen. That's just a bit much, I think. So I did a bunch of research and figured out what I wanted to use instead, a single color of DMC to be the equivalent for each of these. And I just, I'm not that skilled. I don't have actual examples of Classic Colorworks or Weeks Dye Works within reach. We don't have a local needlework shop nearby at all. So I have to go by what's in the photograph, and I missed. So I love the designs of Blackbird design. I like the way it's laid out. I like the design elements. And those two ones I did from Sweet Summer Come Again earlier this year, I really liked. I did mostly the suggestions that they had. I was working on a equivalent size Lugana, and they didn't have blends. They just had single colors, and it worked out fine. I'm really happy with how those turned out. You can look back at previous videos to find those. But this one, this one is going to be fine. It's just not as red. I like red. It's actually my favorite color. Red is red. How many times can I say red meaninglessly? So it's a little disappointing that I let myself be persuaded into that brick-ish color, but it'll be fine. It'll be a very nice little piece. And I also think that our minds supply things. Our eyes take in, actual data, and our minds adjust what we perceive. So I think that when the whole thing is done, when there's a flag that has that color red in it, it will look more red to me. I really think it will. And I'll let you know in a few months when I get to that point whether I'm right or not. At least I'm going to talk myself into it, aren't I? So speaking of red, this is sampler 193 by, oh my goodness, I always have to look, 2x2 Stitch Art. It's an Etsy shop. This is a large piece. It's about 23 inches square, I think, when it's finished. And I'm using DMC 777 on 16 count Aida. I did not take this out of the hoop either, but you can see this is the center of it, and I'm starting to work up with the swoopy stuff that goes up above that. As I wanted, so I won't say it's a mindless project, but because it's all the same color thread, there's certainly less mind required, just a matter of following the pattern and counting correctly, which is why we do counted cross stitches, because we enjoy that kind of thing. So that's what I'm using. I'm actually using the PDF version of the pattern in Pattern Keeper to work on that. And that is a color red that I like. Under the Roof of Blue Ionian Weather. I mentioned last time that the Tour de France is on, and I'm going to be interested to see this in the camera. Anyway, in Full Coverage Fanatics, there's a Tour de France. Full Coverage Fanatics is a Facebook group. There's a Tour de France challenge, which is to stitch a number of stitches related to the number of kilometers of the Tour de France, and I am doing that. I'm choosing the polka dot jersey, which is just over 2,200 kilometers, and so that's what I'm doing. And I've been working a lot right here. I worked some up here. You probably can't tell at all that anything's different up here, but I have been working here, and this is the sleeve of this next woman who's here. And it's interesting that from a distance I can tell sort of that it might be a sleeve, whereas up close it just is all the same color still. I mean, it's not all the same. It's confetti, many colors, and the blends. So, but from a distance I can sort of begin to see that. So I'll have to watch my own video and see what I can detect. But I've done about 500 stitches out of 2,200 that I need to do. So I have until the 24th of July to do that. Oh, I should show you. This is the picture. It's charted by On Golden Kite. I keep doing that. There is a movie, famous movie, as all of you I'm sure know, called On Golden Pond, which apparently is on my mind, which is funny because I don't really love movies. But this is the woman right there. I've been working from here over, so it's her sleeve. According to Pattern Keeper, which if I were not using Pattern Keeper, I could not do this. but according to Pattern Keeper, I'm about 32%, maybe a little more than, maybe 36% done, I can't remember. Something in that range. I will, if I achieve the 22,000 stitches in 2022 goal of Full Coverage Fanatics, I will pass 50% because I will have at least 43,000 stitches out of 72,000. So I'll be on the downhill. Now, at one point I thought I was going to finish that in 2 years from the date I started, which would mean I'd have to finish it in at the end of March 2023. Not happening. It just isn't. So I'm not holding out for that. I'm also going to show you this, which is Eliza Stringer age 6. And this is the little sampler that the Great British Sampler Weekend 2023 participants has been given by Hands Across the Sea. It's a reproduction sampler. And it's being given to us, as you may remember, I mentioned this last week, without a color, with no color guidance about it. And so one of the things we're supposed to do as interested sampler stitchers is to decide on our own what colors we're going to use. I haven't stitched on this anymore. This is 46 count linen. It's called Latte. That was what the label on it said. I don't know who made it. Maybe one of you knows. This creamy colored 46 count linen Latte. It's on a Zweigart base. I don't have the selvage here, so I can't show you the orange. But so this is the sampler size. There's a single stitch outline, which I'm doing in red. What happened to these? They rolled away. Here we go. I'm using Au Ver A Soie 100.3 silk for this. So red, that was the color I already had, and I decided I wanted to get some more colors, so I got these. Let's see if I can hold these. Kind of. Yeah, not bad. Wow. I did know how to juggle once. So these are 3 other colors, and this is again the linen. So I think that's going to look nice. So my thoughts on why I'm choosing these colors. First of all, in the pattern, there's this border, which to me looks like it has leaves and flower buds. So I wanted to use green for the leaves and pink and red for the flower buds. This down here is another border. It's, you know, pretty dense in stitching. I think it would look nicer if it had different colors, multiple colors in it. And then there are little borders between the lines of letters up here, which I think could be different colors also. Now, I am not any expert in antique samplers at all, but I have looked at a lot of them, a lot of reproduction samplers on Facebook. I mean, not on Facebook, no, Flosstube in the past year. And so I've sort of gotten an idea of what samplers, what colors are used in 19th century samplers. And red is a big color in those. There's often red in those. And there are often these, you know, similar colors to these. There are often more colors than this. There, no shadow. But one of the things about it is that I always think when I look at a photograph of the antique and then the reproduction of it, is often the reproducer is going toward the idea of this is what this antique sampler looks like now. If you were to own the antique sampler itself and have it on your wall, here it is. So I want to make it possible for you to pretend you own the antique sampler, if you will, by charting it the way it looks right now. And so if it has pale colors, I'm putting pale colors. Now, another thing that happens though, and I've learned this on Flosstube, and I've learned this just through my own life experience, is the part of that antique sampler that wasn't exposed to the light as much is not as faded looking. It's not as muted. It's sometimes much more vibrant and has more brilliancy to the colors and more contrast, more just brighter colors. So I think to myself, so I as a stitcher of this Eliza Stringer 6 years old sampler, do I want to pretend that I own the antique and put it on my wall? Or do I want to pretend I'm 6 years old and my governess has handed me some linen and a needle and is teaching me to cross stitch, and here's a basket of threads, which aren't faded? Well, in order to really know more about what colors might have been available to Eliza Stringer, I would need to know a lot more about textiles and dyeing and that sort of thing. I will recommend a Flosstube, which is by Susan Standley, Standley. And she's quite interested in the historical nature of lots of aspects of cross stitch and of quilt making. Sort of historical design elements, and her videos are quite interesting from that standpoint, and if you're interested in it, I suggest you check her out. She's, very unpretentious, but she's extremely knowledgeable, and she researches her videos more than the average Flosstuber does, including myself. I'll put myself in the average category for sure on this topic. And so she can shed light on this much more than I can. I can only say my observations from other Flosstubes, because I haven't done or looked at a lot of samplers, reproduction samplers, is that there are possibly two schools of thought. One is to reproduce it as if you owned the antique, and the other is to reproduce it as if you were stitching it for the very first time. So in this color choice, I am sort of going to go halfway. That green is not the most brilliant green available. This little tan color, I chose it because I knew it would show up against this linen. And I wanted a color that was not a color, that was more neutral. So in some ways, it's an homage to antique samplers, and in other ways, it's me wanting a little bit of actual color that's a little brighter maybe than some of the reproductions that I have seen. Not all of them, but some of them. So that's it. And over the next few months, you'll see this unfold, and you can have an opinion yourself about whether I made good choices. And you can always tell me in the comments whether you think I made good choices. I always read them, and I try to comment back. So that's that. And that is that. That's really all I wanted to show you about cross stitch. However, I do have a couple more things to talk about, because you can't shut me up when you put a camera in front of me, apparently. So for the variety show portion of today's video, I wanted to talk about one of the authors that I have enjoyed reading over the past, well, I haven't read anything by him in the past 5 or 6 years probably, but before that, I really read a lot by Richard Russo, and I'm showing you the book Nobody's Fool. Richard Russo is a 20th century, 21st century American author, novelist, and his type of novel, a lot of them are, well, I think that this little blurb here, is this where it is, where I found it? Yeah, in the back of Straight Man, which is a pretty good book. In this uproarious new novel, Richard Russo performs his characteristic high-wire walk between hilarity and heartbreak. And somebody else, somewhere else, it calls it tragic comedy of the human condition. And so there's a lot of humor in it. There's situations that are funny. There's relationships that are funny in these books, in his novels. And there's also a lot of real, true stuff. Nobody's Fool, I think, might have been made into a movie, and there was a sequel maybe 7 or so years ago called Everybody's Fool, which is the same characters in the same town, which both of these I liked a lot. In fact, Nobody's Fool is the first Richard Russo book that I read. Straight Man is set in an academic community, which, since I live in Chapel Hill, which is very much influenced by the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, this was pretty true. And at the time that I read it, I think it was published in 1993 or so. I was a lot closer to my own academic endeavors, so it was quite true. It rang true for me. And I have another couple ones here. Mohawk, I think this might have been his first novel. I don't think it's his best. I think he definitely got better as he went along. The Risk Pool, we liked this one. My husband and I both did. One of the features of his novels is often the main character is a youngish man or a middle, maybe an older young man, somebody in their 30s, who has a troubled relationship with his father, but they have a relationship. So that's interesting. Now in 2001, he wrote this book called Empire Falls, and in 2002, it won the Pulitzer Prize for fiction. And I read it because I'm a fan of Richard Russo, and I didn't love it. It was a page turner. I couldn't stop reading it, for sure. But it was extremely timely. That is, it had some elements to the story that were very related to events that had happened recently, as of the early 2000s. And it was just, I felt like it was very well done, extremely well written, well put together, but I didn't like it. It doesn't mean that it isn't good, because I like things that aren't good and I don't like things that are good. So I think this is an example of the latter. But it is worth reading but I would recommend, especially in light of things going on in our society today, that if you think you're going to follow any of my recommendations about reading something by Richard Russo, either pick Straight Man because it's more funny and less tragic, or research the topics that are covered in these different novels before you pick one. That would be my suggestion. Now, just one last thing I'm going to say. World Puzzle Federation Sudoku Grand Prix weekend is this weekend, round 7. Round 7 out of 8. And there's one more round to go after this one. And I have to say, I really have enjoyed having the challenge once a month to focus for 90 minutes on Sudoku puzzles that are of medium, I'll say medium difficulty. They're not super hard. They are not trivial. Even the easiest of them is not a trivial puzzle. And just focus for 90 minutes on doing as much as I can on that. I have exceeded my expectations some months and disappointed myself in other months. I have just 2 more rounds this year to go on this particular competition. I don't know if I know nothing about what the online Sudoku world does in terms of competitions once the World Puzzle Federation's Sudoku Grand Prix is over each year. But I do have January to look forward to when they will kick it off again with the 2023 version. So that's fun. So that's why I'm going to be doing one of the evenings this week. So that is, I think, let me look around. I think that's all I wanted to talk about today. I've been working like crazy on that commission quilt I've mentioned before. That has actually cut into my cross-stitch time. But it's a great project to work on while watching the Tour de France on television, which I am trying to watch some of each stage. And so that's coming along. I have some new games for my Nintendo Switch within the past couple of months, which of course take my time and attention. But that's all right. There is more to life than cross-stitch, believe it or not. That said, I hope you enjoy your cross-stitch this coming week or whatever else you are doing, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Many blessings to you, friends.